Greetings, everybody. This is Cameron Say again, North Carolina A&T, and I'm going to create a short video to show you how to use a VDI file to create an almost instant virtual machine using VirtualBox. So I've got my screen shared, and make sure I do. Yeah, got my screen shared. And let's go to the VirtualBox. So we'll fire up VirtualBox. We've got Fedora client here. Now, I fired up a Fedora client a while back today when I was recording another video. And for some reason, I was having a problem with it. It's installed. We've already installed Fedora in a previous video. We showed you how to do that. But and it looks like it's working now. Critical error, yeah. So I'm getting the same error. So we won't worry about that for now. I'm just going to show you the Fedora very quickly, but I can fix that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to fix it with a VDI later. But right now I'm going to do an Ubuntu 32-bit virtual machine using VDI. And a VDI file is just a file that contains the information that the hypervisor needs to you gotta forgive me. I never write a script down, so I'm doing this off the top of my head. So those are where the pauses come from. It's a file that allows the hypervisor to communicate to the hardware to make the hardware behave a certain way. So all a virtual machine is a file. Okay, it's a file that's configured to serve as a conduit from the hypervisor, which is again a piece of software that facilitates virtualization, facilitates communication from the hypervisor to the hardware to generate behavior that mimics hardware, right? Mimics hardware. And so we're going to call it Ubuntu demo. It's going to be 32-bit. I'm going to make it 2 gig, which all I want to portion. I could have portioned more. Well, let me use some more so I can speed up what's going on here. But now you've got to be mindful when you're creating your VMs of how much RAM you have on your system, right? And this is a major consideration in PC and desktop virtualization, either Mac or PC, right? Now on the mainframe, it's not. We don't need a lot of resources on the mainframe, but when you're doing PC virtualization, you need to use as many resources as you can, but you don't want to gobble up too many of your laptop or PC resources. My kind of rule of thumb, and I haven't read this anywhere, just off the top of my head, is no more than 25% of your available resources. So if you have 4 meg of RAM on your laptop or PC, well, your desktop's probably gonna have more than 4, but there are a lot of laptops that only have 4 gigabytes of RAM. You only want to apportion one of those to your virtual machine. If you've got 16, and there's a lot of desktops that have 16 now, you want to do from 2 to 4, but I would do no more than 4. That's gigabytes of RAM. Anyway, I'm going to do 4 here because I've got 16 on the system, and I'm going to say next. Now it's going to ask me, how do I want to handle the hard drive? And you remember when we did Fedora, we created a virtual hard disk. We created one, right? And we did a dynamic one because we didn't want to use the space before we needed it. Here, we're going to use a fixed file that already is configured to run Ubuntu 32-bit. So I've got to point to it. And you can download this from, I'm getting this from osboxes.org, osboxes.org. This is where this comes from. You got to unzip it. They're in zip format. They got to unzip it. But I've done this for you. So for my class, there are going to be people other than people in my virtualization class viewing this video. But for my virtualization class, you have a link to this file. So this is the file that we're going to use. And we're going to say open. And now we're going to say create. Okay, that is done, right? That's it. It's created. Our hard drive space is 4 gig, right? 4 gig, because that is the size of the disk. So that's our virtual hard drive space. Now, I'm going to start it up, and then I'm going to pause the video because it takes a while. The first time you configure it, and you don't have to do any configuration yourself. It's already configured, but the hypervisor has to figure out what the file is trying to get it to do. So it takes a few minutes, and I'm going to pause the video and then come back to the video later. Okay. Sharing the screen again. And this is what it looks like once it starts. Now, it's going to take a minute or two. I want you to see this piece. I'm going to pause the screen again because it's going to take a minute for it to, resume. So I'm going to pause again. Now, once it's done, one thing I didn't show you, I'll show you in a moment. It's kind of important. You're going to get errors if you don't do this, or you might get errors. You might get errors. You might get errors. You might not. Well, I guess I can go ahead and show you now. One of the things that you need to do is make sure in your system you boot to the hard disk. That's your virtual hard disk. If you look at the floppy or the optical and there's nothing there, it may skip it or it may give you an error. I've had both happen to me. So and maybe there's a rhyme or reason there, but just make sure you toggle this, and you can, because the system is running, it won't let me change it. But you can modify this, so make sure the hard drive comes up first, because you're not doing an install. If we were doing an install from an optical file, an ISO, we would need to look at that one first. But because it's already installed to the virtual hard disk, we need to do it that way, and that's pretty important. Now, once this comes up, and this comes from osboxes.org. All these that I'm using come from osboxes.org. The user is osboxes.org, and you can add users. That's your root. And the password is osboxes.org, the same as the username, right? And you can change that if there's any security issues with your installation. And it should come up. I'm going to pause it again because apparently there's some more configuration going on. So I'm going to pause it again. You'll just have to wait when you do it yourself. And now we have a welcome screen up, and make sure I'm recording. Yeah, I am. So click next. And my system ran a little slow because I had to reduce the amount of RAM for some reason. Maybe using 4 was too much. I reduced it to 1, so it's running very slowly. And click next again. You can turn your location services on or off. Okay, and click next. Now, but when you have to, first time it comes up, it wants to make sure the defaults that it has is already configured, but it just wants to make sure that the defaults it has are what it wants. So those are about the keyboard defaults. You can turn your privacy on or off. I'm leaving it on here. And you can connect any online accounts you want. I'll just skip this. And then we're done. Now, the test that I always like to use is, we don't need the help. I want to look at my browser. Oh, another thing, down here at the bottom right, you'll see here, this will tell you if you have disk activity. There's virtual disk activity. These are your control panels here, and I probably showed that in the first video, but if I didn't, these are the bottom right. These are not part of the virtual machine. They're part of the VirtualBox control. So let's test our networking. Remember, we natted this. We turned it on to natting. Maybe that was in a previous video. I'll go back to it anyway, just to make sure when I'm done. And so what we're going to do here is we're just going to put in a public IP address. Now, we have a virtual NIC card on the virtual machine that's talking to the real NIC card on the real machine. And if that configuration worked, and it looks like it worked fine. So there we are. Now, we're going to go through some other configurations and installation of software in later videos, but this was just to show you how to create a virtual machine using a VDI file. And let's go and see, before I leave you, we're going to turn this one off. I'm going to shut it down. I can turn the switch off. And here's my LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn, most of my LinkedIn contacts are from IBM. I got to do something about that. Nothing against IBM, but I want to talk to more parts of the world also. This is the Ubuntu machine. You can see that it's powered off. Settings, I don't know if I showed you in this video. I don't remember because I've had several pauses. Networking, we just had the network address. NAT stands for network address translation. And we can have up to 4 virtual adapters. And so later on, we may be using bridges. I'll explain the pros and cons of that later. But NATing is fine, and the NAT is fine for now. Network address translation. And what that does is that facilitates the virtual card to get an IP address from the physical card. And that's pretty much it for this video.